we've had this last 2 months. The one in the church last week was, obviously very close to us here, as well as, for our legislators. It's been a terrible time for all of us, so I'd like to have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So let's go over the agenda and the rules. It's not a debate. The candidates will only be answering questions. There'll be introductions by each of the candidates, 2 minutes. We have Carl down here in the front that will be doing the timekeeping, so all the candidates need to keep an eye on him, and if he raises it, it's time to stop. Forum questions will be 3 minutes. Then after that, there will be audience questions. That will be 2 minutes. And then closing remarks will be 1 minute. All candidates will answer the same questions. Any candidates who attack their opponents in the response will forfeit their time for a response. So, let's start with Anson with introductions, please.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to all of us this evening. Again, my name is Anson Amberson, and I am the precinct chair in Minden Township in SD 14, and I've been in that position since must have been 2018, after the Trump election the first time around. And I want to let you know about the status of my campaign right now. I am still in the exploratory phase because I've got a lot of personal things to get in order before I can really commit all of my full-time effort to this campaign. So tonight, if you're looking for a Project 2026 from me, you're not going to get that. Hopefully what I want to share with you is more of my philosophy, how I like to think, and the role I feel government should have in all of these questions this evening. And before I get too far, one thing, when I was working as a flight attendant, one of the first things I would tell my crews as I'd be briefing them for their flight briefing is that I'm a Star Wars fan. And little R2-D2 here has some Pez candies that he's willing to share with anybody who wants to come up and speak with me afterwards. So the first 12 people to speak with me afterwards can get a Pez candy if you so choose. Let's see. Where I've lived, I guess I was born in Wisconsin, and I grew up on a small dairy farm there. When I was in college, I did spend a semester living in Scotland. And after that, I lived in Iowa, where I got married, moved back to Wisconsin. I've been living in this district since 2005. I was educated at the University of Eau Claire. I attended several different technical colleges, and I have a wide-ranging professional background, which I'd like to share with you when I have more time. I volunteered in many different areas as well, and again, I just hope to get to know you better tonight and listen to the concerns you have afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeanne, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeanne Hendricks. Thank you for coming out and spending some part of your Sunday afternoon with us. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My whole career has been in healthcare, and I'm an advanced practice nurse. And what is that? It's a nurse that has a 4-year degree and then an advanced degree in nurse anesthesia, either 2 or 3 more years of education. And what is a nurse anesthetist, and what do they do? Well, I'm licensed to work independently or collaboratively, and I put children and adults to sleep for surgery. So I put them to sleep for surgery, I keep them asleep during the surgery, and then I wake them up. I have people's lives in my hands every time I do this. And I will take being your congresswoman just as seriously, with just as much commitment that I bring to my anesthesia practice. Another thing I want to let you know is that I have done labor negotiations within my career. I've worked with many different groups of nurse anesthetists. I've done market analysis of benefits and wages, and then I've put forward presentations, and we have always been successful in securing better benefits and wages for our nurse anesthetists. So I'm very proud of that part of my career too. Now I have some announcements for you. I am running in CD6. I have registered with the FEC, so it's official. Number 2, I am moving to the district this fall. CD6 will become my home. And lastly, I have a new campaign theme, and the theme is together. Let's take back our democracy together. Let's take it back. I saw the threat in 22, I saw the threat in 24, and the threat is here right now, and we need to stop it. Thank you very much.
Austin.
Hello guys, my name's Austin Winkelman. I'm sorry, don't have to talk that loud. I was born and raised in CD6 here before I even knew it was CD6. I spent 35 years kicking the dirt around here, working jobs, going to Hennepin Tech. I graduated there with 2 occupational certificates, one in injection molding and one in extrusion molding, and a diploma in plastics engineering technology. I basically want to represent you all because you're my family. You're home. This has always been home. Short of the 5 years I spent in Wisconsin in the woods learning, basic survival and whatnot. So, yeah, I just want to represent you guys the best I can, and if you would all just take the time to stop and let me know what your biggest concerns are, because for me, that's the most important part. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackson?
Hello everyone, my name is Jackson Miller and I'm running for CD6. My main reason why I'm running is because I want to help make a difference. In my normal job that I work right now, I'm a biomedical engineer and I work on things like pacemakers and medical devices. So every day I show up to work to try and help people who I've never met around the world, make their lives better and maybe even save their lives. I have the pleasure of meeting a lot of people in this district at forums much like this, at fairs and at parades, and it's very clear we have a very strong base, very engaged base. And when I talk to people, they say, hey, we love your policies, we love what you're saying, but we want to know what you're doing. What are you going to do to beat Tom Emmer? And so the 2 things that I'm really going to focus on in my campaign are engaging young voters and also going after undecided and independents. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to forego our base and ignore, whatever people are saying. No, you guys are there. You guys are the strong reason that I'm representing. But we need to look at a realistic chance of what's going to beat Emmer. It's going after young voters and undecided. So, young voters, I'm a young voter myself. I know, what affordable housing the problems are. Getting out from under student loans and medical debt. So I can engage with them and talk with them. A lot of young voters in 2024 voted Republicans because they did think that the Democratic Party was out of touch, or they thought that they didn't have their best interest. That's something I can engage with on a case-by-case basis and really make sure that they feel represented. The other group is undecided voters. 2024, they said that they didn't vote for Democrats because they felt like they were part of the status quo and they felt like they were elite. I went to school at University of Nebraska. I went to school at Prior Lake High School. I don't really have an elite bone in my body. Also, I'm not part of the status quo. I come from a biomedical device manufacturer. My whole job is to make people better, and that's where I'm coming from. I'm not in some DC PAC, super PAC, or pockets or anything like that. So my goal is to represent people and make sure that we bring more people into our tent and have them realize what the Democratic Party can do for them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Doug?
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Chapin, and I'm a candidate for Congress in Minnesota's 6th District. I'm running because our government is broken. And our government is broken because Congress is no longer what the founders intended it to be. The people's house, the branch that was closest to the American people. It's become a subservient body to the White House, a president who's basically out of control. And we need to fix that by putting Congress back in its proper place. And when you need to fix something, you need to hire someone who's suited for the job. When your pipes break, you hire a plumber. When your leg breaks, you hire a doctor. And when your government's broken, you need a policy nerd. Ladies and gentlemen, I am that nerd. I spent 9 years studying politics, government, and the law. And I've spent almost 40 years, just by my boyish good looks, working in and around the public sector on democracy and elections and policy. I have been working with nonprofits, with governments. I have been an attorney in the U.S. Congress. I have worked with folks across the spectrum for years. All of us here tonight have one thing in common. We think that the current administration is wrong, and we think the current incumbent, Tom Emmer, is bad. We have that in common. We also all have interesting ideas for how to fix that. But as you listen to us tonight, I want you to think about one thing. Who is ready to show up on day one and to do the job of being a member of Congress? Who knows the law? Who knows the policy process? Who knows how to get things done? I intend to be that member of Congress. I will be ready on day one. I joke that they'll give me my little pin, I'll figure out where the men's room is, and then I'll be ready to get to work. As you listen to me tonight, I hope you hear that in me. I hope that you are able to hear that from everyone else. I look forward to listening to you, I look forward to speaking to you, and I look forward to being your next congressman. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great to hear a little bit about each of our candidates. Well, let's get into it. Affordable housing. Minnesota lacks affordable housing with a shortage of over 100,000 units statewide and over half of renters spending over 30% of their income on housing. How would you work to ensure that the building of housing units is affordable and that the savings is passed along to renters and homeowners alike? Let's start with Jeanne.
Okay. You guys hear me? Okay. Well, talking to people in the district, this is one of their top concerns is low-income housing. And I want to start out talking about developers. Developers need to get a pot of money to get a project off the ground, whether it's a regular housing or low-income housing. But for low-income housing, they can do low-income housing tax credits. And that's same as cash, and that's given by the government, but it's very, very competitive to get. And they also can get grants, and they can get loans. So they have this pot of money that is made up of all three of those things. So what I can see right off the bat is that we could offer these developers lower interest loans to incentivize them to build low-income housing. We can also, I would also legislate to have more low-income housing tax credits because it's very competitive for them to get them. So if we can kind of have a lot more of that, I think that would be incentivizing them and we might see an increase in building low-income housing. The next thing I want to talk about is zoning reform. I spoke with a company in Minneapolis and they said, you know, zoning requirements are one of the biggest hurdles, the biggest barriers to low-income housing. And here's a few ideas of zone reform. So say you have a single-family home zone where only one single-family units can be. So you can rezone that for multifamily units, for duplex, triplex, and apartments. So that's a way that you can increase rental property in that area. Then you can allow accessory dwelling units like garage apartments and basement apartments. You can decrease parking minimums. Parking space is very, very expensive, and you can't build anything on it. So decrease the parking minimums, rezone for that, and revise the height and density restrictions. Once again, you can go higher, you can build more units. Rezone vacant office parks and parking lots. You know, they're sitting there not doing anything. The city could donate it to the developer or just rezone it to have it be for low-income housing. So that's another great idea. And also rezone for short-term rentals and Airbnbs. They are very lucrative for the owners, but what they do is take rental space away and drive up the rental prices for everyone else. So that those rezoning ideas I think would be very helpful. Now also there's incentives for builders. There's density bonuses. There's a reduction in permitting fees. There's a 4D tax classification that Minnesota started just this last year. And what that means is if I build a unit and I dedicate 20% of the units to low-income housing, I get half, 50% off of my property taxes. So that is an amazing incentive for developers to build low-income housing. Thank you.
Next we'll hear from Austin.
Within the United States, there are many reasons we have a crisis of homes. One of the reasons is we have a benefit of society that is our aging in place policies. This allows older folks to remain in their home while they age gracefully with dignity and respect, and they can get the care they need. One of the main things we have to do to maintain this is allow for, as Jeanne was just saying, the upzoning of smaller properties. We need to allow for more upzoning, along with their ability to control corporations and limit how they can operate and what type of rental properties they can own. We need to allow our homes to be for people, not corporations. There are many nuanced factors that go into this, including Dippy Don's import tax, where he imported a 25% import tax on Canadian. Okay, we'll skip to the heart of it since I'm just screwing up this intro. 3D printed homes. By rapidly developing 3D printed homes, we can drastically drop the price of homes. Or drive down home ownership. This will allow people the dignity of living in a home, the ability to pass down intergenerational wealth via a home, while maintaining our older generations at home with the dignity they deserve. Allowing people in my generation and every other generation the ability to own a home, grow as they see as a person, and take the steps into the middle class they deserve. We cannot lose sight of the American dream of home ownership, higher wages, and better education for everybody. Thank you. And I apologize for my nervousness.
Thank you. Jackson?
Sure. A lot of the stories that I'm hearing when I'm going around talking with voters or people who want to find affordable housing is they just graduated from college. Or maybe, like me, they just got married and they're looking for that new home to move into. You know, they want to pursue the American dream, you know, the family with a dog running in the front yard and a white picket fence. And unfortunately what we're battling is the laws of supply and demand. Is there's just not enough affordable and basically starter homes that are out there. So we need to take a look at what we can do to improve the supply, because the demand is there and they're going to happen. So we need to work with local suppliers, builders, because it's a lot more affordable to build a house for $100,000 and sell it for $200,000. But unfortunately, what they see is, well, I can build it for $200,000 and then sell it for $400,000. Just like in Jerry Maguire, show me the money. That's what these companies are going to want to do. So we need to work with them to see what we can do as far as supplying them tax incentives and working with them so we can start building starter homes. And the great thing is we can also work with local communities and say, where can we put these starter homes? Because people are going to move there, and what that's going to do is if the infrastructure is already in place, it's going to boost the local economy. And so it's working with communities to see where can we put these homes, where can we build these starter homes, and get people, young people engaged, and get them, people maybe who've been renting for 20 years, moving in there as well. Another thing that we have to do is we need to really rein in private equity. I lived in Minneapolis before moving here, and on my block, within a year, there was at least 6 homes that were bought up, tore down, and resold by private equity firms. And so what these young people want to do, when people want to move, they want to move into homes that they can buy for $100,000, $200,000, and start a family, but instead private equity is coming in, offering all cash, tearing it down and building a house that's now worth $450,000, and now that once affordable home is no longer available. Last thing we need to do is we need to take a look at how real estate functions. So I have a real estate friend, and one of the things that you do is when a house is sold in your neighborhood, or when you're trying to sell a house, you take a look at what was recently sold there. And if your neighbor's home sold for $10,000 more, your house goes up by $10,000. And if it sold for $10,000 less, your house suddenly is now worth less, $10,000 less. Neighbors' homes going up and down. And what that will do is that will allow affordable housing to be built next to your neighborhood, and therefore you, as an owner who has lived there for 20, 30, 40 years, won't be punished by also having homes like this being built. Because you've worked hard, you've lived there your whole life, you've put equity into that home, you should not be punished by your community trying to bring in people to look for affordable housing. So it's taking a look at what we can do, and not just focus on the policies and the numbers and the data, but seeing what we can do with our local communities and with the people to bring in more affordable housing opportunities.
Thank you. Doug?
Thank you very much. You know, yeah, great. So I agree with Jackson that we need to look at supply and demand. And very often when we look at affordable housing, not just low-income housing, but affordable housing, we have to look at demand. And very often that means looking for ways to assist first-time home buyers or lower-income home buyers with the purchase. We are starting to see, as always, congressional legislation that would offer first-time home buyers a 10% credit up to $15,000 for buying a new home. Looking for ways to bring buyers into the market with tax credits is one way to do it. The other thing we need to do is we need to look for ways to make people have the income in order to buy homes. Housing is a right, but often housing is tied to someone's wage. Far too many people in this country are unhoused or are working poor, living in their cars, living in substandard housing, not because they aren't able or they don't care about getting a good home, but because they don't make enough of a living to earn one. And so housing is an economic issue, and we'll have to, and I will as your congressman, focus on making sure that folks are making not just a survivable wage, but a living wage. We also need to look at supply, and this is the challenge. Right now, the buzzword in housing across the country is the so-called missing middle. It's a cute name, but it's a big problem. We have lots of houses at sort of the lower end of the rent spectrum, and we have lots of houses in the single-family home, McMansion spectrum. That middle is missing. That starter home for folks who want to come out of an apartment. That smaller home for folks who want to downsize out of a bigger home. The challenge is both developers don't want to build them, but as several people here said, that governments don't always want to allow them. Land use is a big deal in this country, and it's typically been at the local level. We've seen legislation here in Minnesota that would actually, if not challenge, at least push localities to not only encourage them, but maybe even require them to offer duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, or higher density homes in areas which have heretofore been single-family home zones. What the federal government needs to do is it needs to figure out how developers can get the money they need to build affordable homes and not just profitable homes. It needs to find the way to use the tax policy and economic policy to put money in people's pockets to buy a home. And then it needs to build markets that work for both parties in that transaction so that everyone, if they want to, has a chance to realize the American dream. Thank you.
Thank you. Anson?
All right. As I said, I don't have my project 2026, but I do want you to understand that I do understand how important this issue is. When I was in college, and shortly in the years thereafter, I was very active in Habitat for Humanity, and with my work with a lot of those families where we were building homes for them, along with them, because of the sweat equity they had to put into those homes. It was very clear to me that home is essential for children to learn. Home is essential for steady employment. Home is important and essential for improving personal security and reducing crime. And there's no one magic bullet for being sure affordable housing is available. We've had some very creative ideas. I think these are all very good ideas, but some of them are short-term. I do think we need to create a longer-term, sustainable solution to the demand for housing. Demand for affordable housing is driven up by low wages, poor access to quality education, and inflation. A lot of what's going on right now. The Department of Education is being eliminated. Inflation is going up. The tariffs are making our wages go shorter. So for a long-term sustainable solution, we have to find solutions to those problems. Additionally, for me to develop a plan for affordable housing, I'd like to get a better understanding of the current need for affordable housing. I know Eric Putnam at one of his listening sessions in St. Cloud, he was discussing his major role as part of that, and I'd like to tap him to get a firmer understanding of what the current statistics are on supply and demand here in CD6. Also, I'd like to talk a little bit about my personal experience. We live on 20 acres. It was a miracle we were able to move into it in 2007. We were able to move there. I was able to finally have my horse at a place where I didn't have to drive half an hour to get there to see him. But the house, we were land rich and house poor. And right now, I've had to resign from my position in order to get my house in order so that I can participate in this campaign, because it was so difficult for us to get a mortgage to make the repairs that were needed. And we need to reduce barriers to that. Oh, and last thought here is, yes, we do need to pay attention to addressing housing for all stages of life. I have an elder cousin who has been a victim of fraud, where she lost her entire life savings. And I mentioned this previously, but she now needs access to affordable housing because of that victimization, and that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for sharing your thoughts on affordable housing. Next, we're going to move on to education. Public education has become hyper-politicized in recent years, with attacks on funding of public education and equity efforts, creating particular strain on a system that has spent decades doing more with less. And that's been year after year. How will you support our public education system so that teachers can deliver a world-class education to citizens of all backgrounds and needs? And on this one, we'll start with Austin, please.
The Republicans are destroying the American education system as we know it. We have the right and responsibility to reimagine the education system for our future generations. We in Minnesota have to ensure that we have the most open and diverse education system possible to serve Minnesota and the country abroad. The people of the country only deserve the best in education. Reimagining the education system into something that can benefit the whole country. We must first take steps to reimagine our education system by ensuring that the federal government has a mechanism to reduce or allow free tuition for highly in-demand skill sets such as mental health, education, and nursing. As public schools are publicly funded entities via our taxes, the separation of church and state applies.
As hard as it is for kids, those of you who have it, getting them up, telling them that summer's over, it's just as hard for teachers. Not only do they have to deal with middle schoolers and high schoolers every day, but we're asking them to do more with less. Teachers, there's a joke sometimes around there like, oh, well, teachers, you get your summers off. No other job gets to have that, but they work just as hard every year, and many of the teachers that I know have to work second jobs just to even provide for their kids, provide for their families, and yet it's seen kind of as a joke. Think back to your childhood. How many of the people that had an impact on your life, besides your parents, were your teachers? I feel like I can go through and name at least a few of my elementary school teachers, at least the ones that I really liked, and the impact that they had on my life, that they made learning fun. They taught me things, they made school engaging. Yes, I had the friends there, but that's what we're losing under the Republican system, is we're taking that away and we are politicizing learning. We're taking away history and making sure that only certain things can be taught. And the teachers, where in other countries around the world is seen as a prestigious job, something that people want to reach for. People when are walking down the street as a teacher, they're seen as, oh, they're a teacher. Whereas here, our current administration is giving pay bonuses to ICE instead of funding that money towards the teachers who are going to teach our next generations. So really what we need to do is we need to treat our educators as professionals. Treat them with higher income, treat them as in that they are respected individuals, and make sure that we are there to help them navigate these political battles, whatever they may be going through. As a congressman, I'm going to make sure that we're not playing these political games of, is religion allowed in the classroom? We need to be able to allow our teachers, allow our school districts to have kind of a hands-off approach to say, listen, we want you to teach our kids, but it's the school districts, it's the parents in that district that should really have the final say. We should not be putting up guardrails to say, no, you can't teach this, or yes, you can teach this, based off of your zip code. You should be having to look elsewhere than this district, hoping that your children can get a good education. So we want to make sure that we are there for our teachers, making sure that they get competitive pay, access to training if they so choose, and making sure that they have the freedom to teach rather than forcing them to navigate the political battles that we're fighting up here in Capitol Hill. Thank you.
Doug?
Thank you very much. This issue is personal to me. Not only am I a product of public schools, my son is a middle school theater teacher in Northern Virginia. And so for me, the plight of teachers and the role of education is very important. And I don't think you can talk about what's happening with education in this country without recognizing that the current administration is not only attacking education, but is almost literally defunding it by abolishing or trying to sunset the Department of Education. Now, the Department of Education is a big thing, and there are a lot of things going on. Let me give you one example of the sorts of things that are being lost by the Education Department being defunded. There's a project called the What Works Clearinghouse. And what Works does is it reaches out to researchers across the country and asks them to study reading strategies or impact of different pedagogies or different approaches to different communities. And then rather than just asserting that they're good, actually testing that they're good. And then that information all flows up to something called the Institute for Education Science. That has gone completely dark under this administration. So we are not only able to teach our kids, we're flying blind as to what's best and to what's next. And with all due respect, I am not necessarily crazy about letting each individual district make its own decision. Right now, the state of Oklahoma, starting this year in history classes, will teach the big lie from 2020. The big lie that it was President Trump and not President Biden who won the election. Not as a theory, not as one among many, but actually as fact. That's what happens when you let individual jurisdictions make their own decisions about what to teach. We need to have a link to the full community. We need to make sure that our teachers are well paid, they are well supported, they are kept safe. But we also need to give them the tools they need, the pedagogical tools they need to teach our kids and help them to learn. Education is important not just in the it's good for you. Education is good for society. Educated kids commit far fewer crimes. Communities with higher levels of education have lower levels of poverty, have lower levels of other negative social indicators. We don't spend money on education as a waste. We invest in the next generation. And investing in them, we invest in ourselves. As your congressman, no one will fight harder than me to protect public education in this country from the college level right down to the pre-K level, and to make sure that our teachers like my son Chris, have the tools they need to do the job they need to do to make the next generation of America even better than the one we have right now. Thank you.
Anson?
All right. Boy, education. I love learning. My general interest in learning has led me to create all sorts of goals for the rest of my life. In college, one of my friends told me I had so many goals in life that it would take more than one lifetime to achieve them all. And that's true, because of all the things I've loved in education. For me, my context, education has been my means for achieving my pursuit of the American dream, and education is extremely important. Also in my family, I had educators. My father, he was a science teacher and a substitute teacher later in life. My sister, my eldest sister, she taught domestically and internationally. She's involved in languages, English as a second language, as well as teaching languages in an immersive setting. My personal experience working in education, I started out with religious education while I was pursuing candidacy for ministry in the United Methodist Church. When I was working a part-time job to help subsidize my work at the church, I also was a nature center educator and teaching children about the natural world. I was a short-term substitute teacher because I was not fully licensed as a teacher. That was my best way to actually also support my working in ministry. I also worked as a paraprofessional. I did, after I decided not to pursue candidacy for ministry any further, I did pursue the fast-track education program for becoming a teacher for a short time until I decided instead to focus on my medical emphasis. So what will I do? One other thing here. I do recognize that the Department of Education was an important tool in ushering America into the technological age. Without the efforts of the Department of Education, we would not be where we are today, and America would not be a great nation. To me, that's what makes America great, that and service. So again, what will I do to help the education in our nation? First, fund it. It is a priority. Schools should not have to sell or have a bake sale to support their educational needs or programs. What would the military do if they had to have a bake sale to build funds? I think we need to examine our core standards. There's a lot of issue about us teaching to the test in our schools. We need to do more than just that. We need to teach critical learnings and critical examination of topics. And in those core standards, I think we need room for extracurricular examination, just to broaden people's perspectives. And also on the post-secondary level, I spent a lot of time in technical colleges in addition to my 4-year degree. But I think we need to focus on liberal arts. We should not fast-track students into just technical degrees, even though they are beneficial. Thank you.
And Jeanne, okay. All right, education. I agree that our educators have always had to do more with less. That is such a true statement. I'm going to focus today on the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, because the individuals with disabilities, this affects all the other students and the funding, and you'll find that out here in a few minutes. So this act was started in '75, and this act was a mandate to public schools to say, you need to tailor-make an education, free education for individuals with special needs and disabilities. And we will fund it at 40%, but you need to provide this for them. And then you also need to provide transportation to and from school. So that was the mandate for that. When I was being endorsed by the Teachers Association in Minnesota Education in '24, this was their main concern, because this was not funded at 40%. It's never been funded at 40%. It's presently being funded at 10%. So there's this huge gap. So it requires them to take money from the general fund. And that stresses the whole system, taking money from everywhere. So now there is a bill that has been introduced, and it's called the Bill to Fully Fund the IDEA. And it was just introduced this summer. It's now entering committee, and I would support this bill, and I would vote for this bill. I would lobby for this bill, because it's never been fully funded, and it's just been stressing the educational systems. Now, the challenges don't end there. We all know that there's going to be Medicaid cuts coming up in '27. Well, the schools register as Medicaid providers for these disabled students. And what's going to happen is Medicaid is going to be cut, and it's further going to decrease their funding. It's going to be one more cut for them. So I strongly oppose these Medicaid cuts. I would lobby against them. I would vote against them. Now, I'm sorry guys, bad news doesn't end there. 2026, President Trump is proposing cuts to the education budget. Well, what does that mean? That means that there will be $12 billion overall that's cut from the education budget for the country. For Minnesota, there'll be an $80 million cut. For CD6, there'll be a $6 million cut. And they had all these communities, I'm just gonna give you a few. Elk River's gonna be cut by $200,000. Buffalo's gonna be cut by $300,000. St. Cloud's gonna be cut by $690,000 if these go into effect. Once again, and when I'm your congresswoman, I would fight tooth and nail. So this does not happen. This would be completely devastating for our school system.
Thank you, Jeanne. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is the environment. Climate change has been wreaking havoc on state governments with natural disasters driving up costs across multiple industries. Meanwhile, the federal government has been slashing funding for climate research and clean energy subsidies alike. How do you plan to address the impacts of climate change and encourage the transition to cleaner energy? And with this one, we'll start with Jackson.
All right. I grew up camping with my dad. And anytime we go to a campsite, when we got done, he'd be like, all right, we got to clean up. We got to make sure that it looks nicer than when we left it. I think a lot of people in our district also agree with that same sentiment. I think what the unfortunate thing is that we have politicized business versus the environment. Because we're already starting to feel the effects of climate change. You know, I don't know about you, but my interest rates went up. I have to pay more on my roof that has hail damage. Farmers are now feeling that as well. You know, we've had a lot of flooding in CD6, more than we've ever seen. So we're already experiencing it. And yet any time that we want to do anything about it, what comes down to it is, well, yeah, you're going to wreck businesses. You're going to put too much of these guardrails, and the EPA needs to go away because it's stopping the capitalistic machine that keeps the United States going along. I think what we need to do is we need to take a look at this and say, why can't we do both? Why can't we take a look at making sure businesses can still thrive while still protecting the environment? So the first thing that we're doing is going to invest in clean energy, making sure that we build our own batteries here. Why should we be going to China to build our batteries for us? We should be leading the innovation there so that when people say, oh, hey, we need to buy batteries for our new cars or new homes, we got to buy American because they make the best batteries that we have. We also need to take a look at how we're getting our energy. Maybe you work for a company that is trying to go green or do things like that. One of the reasons that they're doing that is because of tax incentives, which I think is great, but also if you're a big company or a big corporation, you're also going to take a look at where you can, save money. You take a look at your bottom line and say, well, listen here, if we can make an improvement, if we can make a change to go green and that saves us $1 million a year, we as a business should do that. So as the government, we should go in there and we should be trying to put in guardrails, basically, telling companies like 3M, hey, you can't dump pollution in the water because it has a negative effect. But also, if you want to make changes on your own, just stay within the rails. Stay within the regulations that we have set, but we want to allow you to pursue innovation. We want you to allow you to pursue growth. And then at the same time, realize that by companies pursuing growth and becoming greener themselves, that we don't have to rely on people to say, well, you should ditch your gas guzzling car and switch to a Tesla, when maybe they don't have the money to do that. So there's things that we can do on an individual basis to make sure that we take care of the environment, cleaning our campsites. We can also work with companies as well to make sure that we take a look at our environment and make sure that it's there for the future and for our future generations as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug?
Thank you, Mark. Before we talk about what we can do to address climate change, I do want to talk about, the question talks about the impacts of climate change. And Jackson alluded to it. We're starting to see interest rates go up. We are starting to see insurance rates go up. There are some communities in this country that are literally uninsurable because insurance companies can see what's happening and won't insure properties that they know will be devastated by a hurricane or a flood or potentially a wildfire. Yeah. On top of that, we have an administration that has decided that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA for short, doesn't need to exist, that they can just push those costs off on the states. And you can tell they're serious because even Republican governors can't get their calls answered after a disaster. It's one thing to deny climate change in the face of science, but it's another thing to make people suffer the consequences of your denial without offering help. And that, as your congressman, is one thing I will move very quickly to turn around. We are promised help from the government when a disaster strikes, and as the climate continues to change, disasters will continue to strike. And I will fight to make sure that FEMA and other federal agencies do their part. Now, what can we do about it? Surprisingly, CD6 is actually has got quite a few businesses in it that rely on green energy, that make green energy technology. And on top of that, we have one of the original green energy producers, and I know they're not always popular, but the Monticello nuclear plant is a green source of energy. So we are going to have to look at how we can use solar and wind to buttress more baseline power, whether it's nuclear. We need to find something that is not fossil fuels so that we can't stop climate change. We're not going to fend it off. We have to, at this point, make sure that we just mitigate it. But we need to go back, restore the green energy credits. We need to restore funding for climate change research and green energy research. And we need to get America back in the business of caring about the world. And finally, for those of you environmental activists out there, we need to rejoin the Paris Accords. The entire world has stood up and said we will work together. And like so many other issues, this administration has decided to turn its back on the world. Now, as your congressman, I'm not going to by myself be able to get us back into the Paris Accords, but as a member of a Democratic majority in the House and a Democratic majority in the Senate, we will push the White House to reconsider that decision, and 2 years from now, we will elect a president who will put us back in the Paris Accords. Thank you.
Anson?
This is one of my favorite topics. I've been thinking about this ever since being a child, and even then, you know, it was time for wind and solar at that time, and it's still do now. You know, I grew up in nature on a farm at home, so I was very close to nature. So I really appreciate the need for biodiversity. You know, our farms, you know, tend to be monoculture. We need to maintain that biodiversity so we can maintain those systems that clean our atmosphere, that you know, that remove the pollutants that are causing climate change. As I was growing up, while I was in college and even after, I witnessed urban sprawl on a large scale. We did an urban plunge as an alternative spring break to Chicago, and while we were there, I just looked out over all the rooftops, and there was no green. These urban heat islands are, you know, intensifying storms in urban areas. Even in Minneapolis, that's been evident in recent years. Iowa City, where I worked as a research assistant at the university there, you know, the farms are just being paved over at an amazing rate. We need to find, well, while I was there, I even started examining a way to, you know, dovetail urban development with the habitat so we can maintain habitat, maintain a green structure in that urban setting. As a weather spotter for several years, I've seen the storms increase in intensity. I've seen the storms increase in frequency. You know, and so when scientists are taking, you know, stating this, that it's happening and it's real, I agree. I've witnessed it. As a person with a science background, I believe in the scientific data that says this is human-based. You know, they've demonstrated that this isn't just from volcanoes. You know, that the carbon is coming from, you know, it has an atomic signature that indicates it's actually coming from our fossil fuels that we are releasing. And this change is real. You know, when it's spreading in these coastal cities, yeah, it's really having an impact now. And insurance companies are having to deal with it. You know, we've had to have our benefits with insurance on our homeowners policy changed because of all the damage, all the cost that's happening across this whole nation. So what will I do? We do need to address the root causes. One of these is the clean energy that's already been mentioned. I do support nuclear energy as well, We do need to address the safe disposal. I do think we can get energy from that disposed nuclear material. Just from all that hot water, there's a way to convert that to energy, and we should be doing that. I also recognize that industry has squelched EVs for a long time. We need to increase the infrastructure that makes it easy for people to travel. And we need to create that energy cleanly. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeanne?
Okay. All right, now the science is undeniable. Our planet is warming, and we're seeing more flooding, more hurricanes, and more wildfires. So we need to keep pushing forward with a clean energy, wind and solar. We need to keep that momentum going, and of course, constantly transitioning away from fossil fuels. Now I'm going to talk about tax credits again because they're all going away. Here we go. There is a tax credit for wind and solar startup companies that is going to end in 7 of 26, which I would push that deadline back by about 5 years. We need to keep the momentum going for these companies to keep having these tax credits so they can keep proliferating. We need to keep that momentum going. Secondly, residential tax credits for putting solar panels on your roof are going away at the end of this year. I will legislate to push them back. Why wouldn't we give somebody a tax credit for doing that? And finally, tax credits for electric vehicles are going away this month. Again, I would legislate to push those back. People should be able to have a tax credit for buying an electric car. So when I'm here at Congresswoman, I would legislate to push all of these deadlines back. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the northern Minnesota copper and nickel mining. Part of the question was talking about keeping our environments pristine. And all of you know about this, the threat to our northern Minnesota. And why it's such a threat is because copper and nickel is housed in a sulfide compound, and when air or water hits it, it becomes an acid. And it becomes an acid runoff, and it runs off into the watershed surrounding it. There's two main mining companies right now, PolyMet or NorthMet, and they've been stopped. The permits were rescinded. The second company is Twin Metals, and they want to do an underground copper mine that's right by the Boundary Waters Canoe area. President Biden issued a moratorium in 22 saying you can't mine here for 20 years. So right now everything is stopped, so that is great. But your friend and mine, Republican Pete Stauber and CD8, just tried to slide a language into the budget reconciliation bill saying you guys can go ahead and mine in Twin Metals and nobody can legally challenge you. Well, in swoops our hero Tina Smith, and she goes, you're not going to do that. That doesn't have anything to do with the budget. So she goes to the parliamentarians, they take it out. Yay, Tina, right? They take it out, which I think is just awesome. So I want to be Tina in the House, for sure. And I don't agree with this mining. I would vote against it all day long. I would fight tooth and nail to not have it. So, there you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeanne, and thanks for reminding us of what a bulldog that Senator Tina Smith has been. All right. The next subject we're going to tackle here is First Amendment. In recent years, the First Amendment has been weaponized to uplift political extremism and misinformation in an increasingly biased media climate. How would you work to ensure First Amendment protections while curtailing issues around increasing political extremism? And this one will start with Doug.
I'll throw it to the lawyer, okay?
Yeah.
Does anybody here know what the first word of the First Amendment is? Congress. Congress shall make no law. Part of the problem in our country right now is that Congress has abdicated that responsibility. You have a White House which is telling people what to say, what not to say, and is punishing them for what they do and don't say. The First Amendment in this country is tricky. When you go to law school, you spend an entire semester learning about it, fighting about it, being flummoxed by it. What's amazing about the First Amendment is the sorts of things that are not unconstitutional, or that are constitutional, that are not disallowed. You're not allowed, for example, to yell fire at a crowded theater. You're not allowed to engage in hate speech. But you are, for example, allowed to lie in a political campaign.
the Supreme Court has ruled that you need not be truthful. That's part of the political process. And so negotiating the First Amendment in this country is always tricky because we have so many guardrails and can't do. I think the way to address what we've been dealing with so far is what Congress has been trying to do. It's been trying to balance, for example, in the social media space, whether or not to make social media companies liable for what is put on their sites, or giving them restrictions on what can be put on their sites or shown to minors, or what have you. What we need to do, just like we need to do in areas like guns and elsewhere, is to balance the constitutional right against the protection of people who are vulnerable. And as your congressperson, I would be using that first year law school training to make sure that the First Amendment is protected, but also is not used as a shield for hurting people. The other thing I want to talk about is this concept of misinformation. Very often we assume that misinformation is our crazy relative on Facebook or some troll on Twitter or Blue Sky. But more often than not, misinformation is coming from people who are hostile to America. It's Russia, it's China, it's North Korea, it's Iran. And so those outrageous things you see on Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky or Instagram are supposed to make you mad. They're supposed to divide us. And there used to be a federal agency that was designed to help protect us from that. It's called the Cybersecurity and Internet Security Agency within DHS. The Trump administration has completely defunded and defanged that agency. So we are now at the mercy of people who would inflict misinformation upon us. As you're a member of Congress, we will restore CISA to its rightful place. We will put troublemakers where they belong, which is not in our social media. Thank you.
Anson, please.
All right. Well, free speech. Wow, this is one of our basics of democracy, and it is so important. But at the same time, truth has been turned on its head, and it has become normal to do so. And it makes me feel more and more like our society is becoming more like the Russian police state. And that disturbs me. So we need to do something, but yes, we need to protect free speech. I've thought about this, and it's a very difficult issue, as Doug has pointed out. But one idea that's stuck with me is forming some form of a body that is independent of government. And this is necessary because we don't want a scenario like 1984 where the government is telling you what's true and you must believe it. But I do think we need some sort of an independent organization that might consist of fact-checking organizations joined with people from the political parties that can all share their input about the truthfulness or false nature of extreme political statements. We have seen that these statements are very harmful and have threatened lives. This Pizzagate, this man walks in with an assault rifle, or was it a shotgun, I'm not sure which, but into a pizza department, or a pizza parlor, because he thought that in the basement they were having some sort of democratic sex ring for children down there. I mean, it's absurd, but it has a real effect. And the same thing applies to the statements made by the current president. He is whipping up the fervor. I mean, we witnessed this year, and it's just so painful to see that being a politician can put a target on your back. I mean, we've known that people could be subject to assassination, but the risk has been increased because of these things, and we must address it. And I would start by examining an independent organization that can examine and put the facts out there. Additionally, part of this, I think, is also just returning to the basics of democracy, going into the Constitution, looking at all of the amendments that have been passed, and even our Declaration of Independence, and including this in education, just to touch back on an earlier topic. People need to understand what democracy is and what fascism is, what authoritarianism is. They need the truth, and I hope that we can resolve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanne. Okay. There's extensive protections with the First Amendment. Speech that is deeply offensive, racist, and sexist is protected. And the Supreme Court has said the government can't prohibit speech just because it's offensive or disagreeable. So there's wide protections for a lot of things we don't want to listen to, right? I would have to say. There are things, however, that are not protected, and a few examples of those are obscenity, child pornography, and false advertising. I agree that I think we're facing a crisis of misinformation, and we need to educate the public on how to root it out, how to suss it out, because it is becoming kind of an epidemic. It really is. When I'm your Congresswoman, one thing I'd like to do is I would like to legislate regulation of the use of AI. There really isn't a whole lot of regulation going on. And I don't know about you guys, but I've seen imagery and information, and I'm going, okay, that's not real. And so I would like to have that be my project, that I am going to spearhead that, because it's just a wide open area that we need to have more regulation. Now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, but this is about free speech in the church. And I want to talk about the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment was started in '54 for any nonprofit, and it said you can't be for one candidate and you can't give money to them if you're a nonprofit, okay? And so that's been the law for the Johnson Amendment. But what's happened is a group of religious broadcasters have just recently brought a suit against the IRS saying, you're not allowing us to talk about candidates in church, that's against our freedom of speech. So what happened is they settled, and the IRS agreed to allow the churches to endorse political candidates. Now they didn't go so far as to say that they can donate money. That part of it stayed intact. But the reason why this is so dangerous is because dark money can be funneled into the churches saying, oh, if you will endorse our candidates, all this money will come into the church. And the churches have no way to, they don't have to write anything down, they don't have to account for anything, they don't have any reporting laws at all. So it's just another way for dark money to come in and influence our elections without us knowing anything about it. So anyway, I wanted to say though that a watchdog agency came by that are for the separation of church and state and said, no, we don't want you to water down this language. We want the Johnson Amendment to stay the way it is. And so right now it hasn't been settled yet. But I am for keeping the Johnson Amendment the way it is. Leave it alone. It's been working for a long time. We don't need to change it. Thank you.
Maybe you're like me. Maybe you have a coworker in your life. Maybe it's a family member, or maybe even your spouse that might not let you get a word in. Now, don't look at him right now. I don't want to get you in trouble. But we all know what it's like to not have a voice, to not be able to feel like you can get a word in edgewise. Now, that's what we're going through right now. Is the government wants to stop our voice, and the founding fathers put it as the First Amendment because they realized how important that actually is, and why it's the first one. There are the reasons that we can have things like protest and the No Kings rally, where we can get out there and say the things that we need to say, because the answer isn't to weaken free speech. The answer is to get together and strengthen our democracy through freedom of speech. Now, we need to be able to do this together, and we also need to be able to hold people accountable at the same time. I'm not a lawyer, but I do know there are limits to what can be said and what can't be said. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we hold social media platforms and other media outlets accountable for their transparency. There's a law, or there's a recent thing that came out about Fox News being sued, and the reason that they said that they couldn't be sued was that they're not actually news. They just have opinions. that Fox News isn't actually news, therefore we cannot be sued by the things that we say. Like to me, that doesn't make sense. Media outlets should be held responsible for the misinformation that they put out there. I mean, look at the Dominion lawsuit. That was going out there because of the lies that they were spreading, the people that were harmed because of the lies that were there, the death threats that they received. So we need to be able to take a look at free speech, and we need to be able to exercise it and make sure that we can talk to each other about it, with it, because that's what strengthens our democracy, the ability to get together, the right to assembly, petition, press, speech, all the other things that are in the First Amendment allow us to make sure that we have strong democracy, and the Founding Fathers realized that the government shouldn't be able to limit that if this country is going to succeed. The other thing that the question asks as well is about political extremism. And we need to make sure that we keep that in check because it's there to protect the vulnerable. The people who can't defend themselves, the people who experience the hate online, the people who get doxxed, which is basically, oh yeah, here's their address, here's where they live. I mean, that's why local senators and local representatives get harmed, is because their information gets put out there, and we need to make sure that we hold people accountable for that violence and the domestic terrorism, but we also need to make sure that we also foster the dialogue that we can bring together people. I mean, free speech is a double-edged sword. There's a whole reason that they spend a semester learning on it, because when free speech is used right, it can strengthen our democracy, and when it's used inappropriately, it can weaken it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. Moving on to the next topic, tariffs and taxes. I have to commend all the candidates for staying within the time limits and keep moving along, because I know you have questions you want to ask as well. The fiscal policies of the current administration have driven up costs for consumers in all aspects of life to subsidize and lavish lifestyles of the wealthy. How do you plan to leverage tariffs and taxes to ensure a healthy middle class? And with this one, we'll start with Anson, please.
Well, to have a healthy middle class, I mean, you have to be able to afford to live. And the current tariffs and, I guess heavier taxes on the lower incomes rather than the wealthy, both make it harder for the middle class to exist. So regarding tariffs to begin with, we have just been insulting our allies and our international trading partners with what the current administration is doing to them, flogging them senselessly. There's no need to turn our friends into enemies. And it's creating a lot of damage to us on the international stage. It's driving Russia, China, and North Korea together. And even India, somebody who should be our ally, is now being driven into the arms of Russia, China, and North Korea because of the current policies. So one of the first things I would do is attempt any way I can to reestablish normal trading relationships with our trading partners. I mean, we do need to protect special interests within our country, so maybe we wouldn't do away with tariffs entirely, but we can't go with these astronomical tariffs that are currently in place. And regarding taxes, we definitely need to protect those who earn the least, who can least afford to pay taxes. In my religious upbringing, the common theme is 10% of tithe to support the organization you're a part of. I out of that frame of mind, I support a flat tax for those who can afford it. So once you get above a certain level, I'm not sure if it would be four times the poverty limit, but at some point, you'd have a progressive tax until you meet that flat rate for everybody else above that line who can afford it, so that even the wealthy will pay their fair share. And they won't be moved up into a higher tax income bracket the more money they earn. They won't be penalized for earning more. I think a flat tax is very important. And again, I'm just so embarrassed by what our current administration is doing to our reputation on a global stage. And we just need to correct that. And we need to make life affordable for the middle class by affordable taxes, as long as the wealthy can pay their fair share. Thank you.
Jeannie? Am I on? Yeah, here we go. Okay, start talking about tariffs. The first thing, the Trump rollout. It was so chaotic, so haphazard, it changed every day. It bred a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty is the enemy of investment and economic growth. And that's what's happening. Now, the economists are saying, they're disagreeing with him, they're saying that the importers and the consumers are paying that tax, and we are. We are. And all the economists would tell you that. Now, some people will say, who wins with all these tariffs? And the Democrats will say, I don't think anybody's winning, but I think there is a winner, and I think it's China. And here's why I say that. Just what Anson was saying is that there's this huge power vacuum that's being created by Trump, with these tariffs. He's just ticking all these countries off. So there's this power vacuum, and China is happy to move right into it. And they're saying, we have a stable economy, come here, come invest with us. So they're going to be one of the winners. Now I want to talk just a little bit about a section of the economy, the steel industry. They have been benefiting somewhat from the tariffs. The tariffs, the protective tariffs for that the other guy's paying across the sea, is giving the steel industry more money, and they're creating more jobs. But what's happening is that the down consumers, the automobile industry, the construction industry are having to pay more for the steel, and their jobs are going away. So there's not a net sum game of jobs that are being created. Trump always talks about in 10 years we're going to have all these jobs, all the manufacturing is going to be coming back. Those jobs are going to be automated, computerized, and AI driven. There's not going to be a need for that many people to be watching those machines. So that's probably not going to happen too. Now, the American investment is down now, as I said, the uncertainty of Trump's tariffs. And it's people are looking at us and going, your deficit's sky high, you have these very chaotic tariffs, you don't balance your budget, maybe I should take my money someplace else, right? And so that is what's happening. The most talented don't want to come here anymore. The smartest and most talented, because guess what? We're not a friendly nation anymore. We're like Fortress America, and that is going to hurt our bottom line. That is going to hurt our bottom line as well. Now, Trump gave massive tax breaks to the wealthy, and he said, don't worry about that $3 trillion over the next 10 years because the tariffs will pay for all of that. Well, every economist would disagree with that. And I would not leverage the tariffs. I would do away with Trump's tariffs. I would give tax relief to the middle class, and I would reverse the tax cuts he did with the wealthy.
Thank you, Jeanne. Jackson, please.
I don't know about you, but every time I go get groceries or make a trip to Target or something like that, I check my receipts and I think, man, maybe I should start working here just for an employee discount. It's outrageous how much these prices are going up. And the thing is that it feels like the deck is clear that the Trump administration thinks that tariffs are the way out. That if we just keep digging down more with tariffs, we're going to dig ourselves out of this hole. In the United States history, there have been 2 times before this that have had tariffs to this level. One has led to a recession, one has led to the Great Depression. Right now, our job report came out, and jobs are not doing well either. So I think it's pretty clear what this third one is going to do. So and the thing is, we're not even fully feeling that right now. Companies have come out and said, yeah, we've taken the brunt of it a little bit, but come in Q4 or come next year, we're going to completely pass the tariffs on to us. So if you thought it was bad now, just wait till it gets worse under these tariffs. So Trump is going to keep going through with this. So if I get into Congress, what I'm going to make sure is that we have some kind of check in place. That sure, President, you can want to say that there is a 50% tariff on something, but as Congress, we're going to come in and we're going to reduce it, or we're going to change it, or completely get rid of it. Because tariffs have their place. You know, if we want to stop jobs from going overseas to China, we can put tariffs on them to keep them here, but we can't just keep leveraging 150% one day and the next day 30%. It's not going to work, and who's suffering are farmers and small businesses. farmers, especially soybean farmers, China, in retaliation, is not buying soybeans from our farmers anymore. They were the #1 buyer and purchaser. So our farmers now have soybeans that they can't sell, and they don't know how they're going to make the money that they normally would. And the second people who are suffering are small businesses. My uncle owns a sign shop here in this district, and I talked to him about this, and he said with the tariffs, this has been the hardest year that he's ever had in his business. That includes starting a small business, that includes COVID, and it's because he doesn't know where he's going to get his supplies, he doesn't know if he's even going to make money by taking certain jobs, and if he's going to, he has to pass those prices on to his clients. And sometimes he won't get business because of that. So small businesses are hurting too. We need to make sure we can stop those tariffs to help them out. The other thing that came up is taxes. It's very clear that the tax system is made to reward wealth and not work. I think it should be the other way around. If you work hard, if you work a 9-to-5 job, if you've got kids, we should have a tax system that works for you, not for the wealthy. We need to make sure that, there's a lot of proposals out here or elsewhere to say, tax billionaires 99% of their wealth. What we need to do is we need to make sure, first of all, everyone pays their fair share. A CEO of a hospital should not be paying less in taxes than one of the nurses, and we need to make sure that with these taxes that we keep money flowing so it's not hoarded, and that the money can be spent to help invest in things like infrastructure, education, and clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug?
Thank you. Jeanne mentioned how chaotic the Trump tariff rollouts were, and they were definitely chaotic. Does anybody know whose job it is to actually set tariffs in the American system? Congress, right? I feel like I'm going to call and respond. It's Congress. And Congress can be chaotic, but it's making laws. But when it comes to doing things like setting tariffs or deciding on what to do with taxes, Congress is a lot less chaotic than this current White House. As your Congress member, I would actually restore the place, I would insist upon the place of Congress. When President Trump rolled out these tariffs, Congress could have said, no, it's our job to decide that. There were lawsuits that attempted to do that. But Congress itself and the Republican majority did nothing. Let it happen. When we are in the majority, those tariffs will not be part of America's economics. Now, tariffs are not always bad. Those of you who took econ, when the price of something goes up, the demand for it goes down. And sometimes a foreign nation, we'll call it China, will unfairly subsidize an industry in order to lower the price that comes to the United States. In order to reverse that unfair trade practice, the United States will place a tariff on that good in order to drive its price back up and drive the demand back down and reverse the unfair trade practice. So sometimes tariffs can be good. Unfortunately, under this administration, the tariffs themselves are the unfair trade practice. We are essentially running a shakedown operation with the world economy by placing large tariffs on nations and then forcing them to come to Washington and essentially beg for relief. And then the White House extracts, whether it's a portion of their holdings, whether it's some kind of concession. The problem is that he doesn't pay those, and the foreign countries don't pay those. We pay those. Jackson talked about the weak jobs report. We're already starting to see inflation tick up. The pain is coming, and Congress could have done something and didn't. Now on taxes, very quickly, I want to shout out, she's not here tonight, our friend and colleague Sierra Grandy, who recently exited. We were talking taxes the other day, and she said the one thing I think people forget, people view taxes as a fee that needs to be paid. It's not. It's almost like a subscription. It's something that you pay in to the American system so that we can have things like clean water and safe streets and well-educated children. We're not asking to penalize billionaires. We're not asking to penalize big corporations. We're asking them to pay their fair share. I respectfully disagree with my friend from St. Cloud. I think flat tax is a terrible idea. I think the American system of progressive income taxation is the way it should be. And I think we should reverse the tax cuts and jack that rate back up on the billionaires across the country. Thank you.
Well, next up, we're going to do a few audience questions. I would like to just take a moment to thank all of the volunteers that helped put this together. Could you raise your hand? elect. So I will start with the audience questions I have. Limit 2 minutes per question. Some of them are going to be really quick. Have you filed with the FEC? What is your timeline? And we'll start with Anson.
Well, as I described earlier, I am still in an exploratory phase, and I do need to be sure my house is in order before I actually commit to that filing. Once I begin my campaign in earnest, then I will do that filing. I hope to do that this fall, so I'll have plenty of time to get everything in order before the party nomination next year.
Thank you. Jeanne?
Yes, I have filed with the FEC Form 1, and that is the statement of organization. Okay? Then you can do fundraising, but when you hit $5,000, you need to do Form 2, which is your statement of candidacy. So they allow for a little bit of fundraising in between there. So I have just done Form 1 at this point. So that's where I'm at in the process. Thank you.
And Jackson?
I have not. Hello. I have not yet. I have gotten the EIN number to do that. I actually just recently got back from my honeymoon in Scotland, so I wanted to make sure to, focus on my wife, focus on her, and enjoying the trip instead of thinking like, well, what time is the FEC open? I fly today. So now that I'm back, I will be filing here soon and getting those forms completed.
Thank you. And Doug?
I filed both a statement of organization and a statement of candidacy on July 1st. I've begun raising funds and expect to report what I hope will be an impressive total on September 30th. My timeline is I'm in, I'm not going anywhere, and I intend to win this race.
The next question I have is, are you a strong DFL supporter, and will you abide by the values of the DFL? And we'll start with Jackson on this one.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a director for SD6, and at the beginning of our meetings, we always go over our statement of intent, and that's to include people, to speak for the voices of those who don't have me, making sure that we represent all people, not just people who are like me. So yeah, absolutely, I stick by those rules and support them 100% moving forward.
Repeat the question.
It was, are you a strong Democrat? Are you a strong DFL supporter, and will you abide by the values of the DFL?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. The next question I have is, if you get the nomination, I'm sorry, I apologize. Anson, go.
Oh, yeah. I was raised to treat people like people. And, so yes, I am a strong DFL supporter. Because I think the Democratic Party is most aligned with that thought. But at the same time, I see myself as a centrist in that party, because I recognize that all political parties in this nation need each other to make this nation strong. And we need to work together between all those different parties. In part of my religious background, we're taught to value all the different parts of the body. All these different parties are part of the body of America, and we need to work together. If one part of the body fights against the rest of the parts of the body will die. And I have to recognize that. And democracy is built on people with different ideas being able to work together. In my religious background, I was fairly conservative. And, I had some issues about, maybe homosexual leaders coming into the church. But at the same time, those people have the right to be respected as people, because they are people first in a secular society. And they need to not be, told that, they don't deserve to exist, like the current president is trying to, tell trans people they don't exist, they don't have rights. So even though I may be conservative in my own values, I recognize the importance and validity of people with other values, and I support their rights. So thank you.
Thank you. And Jeanne?
You know, I always say that capitalism unchecked would lead to chaos, right? We have to have regulation, we have to regulate capitalism, or we would have what's happening now. I'm just kidding. I just think also that we need to help the least of us. We need to help those who have the least. That's what I think the Democratic Party is all about. It's not just about wealth and accumulating wealth, it's helping the least of us and having the programs that are going to lift them up. That is a humane society. And I see that more in the Democratic Party. And I'm proud to be a Democrat because of that. So, thank you.
Thank you. If you get the nomination, you know you will get the liberal vote and you will not get the mega vote. What is your strategy to get the vote of the huge swath of persuados? Let's start with Doug.
That's the million-dollar question, right? I think one of the things that's important to note is that this district is actually growing faster than the state. The state is growing at a little bit less than 1% a year since 2020. This district is growing 5 times as fast. And so we are having new people pushing into the district, mostly from the cities and up the Rochester corridor. So we will have more people with whom we agree. But we're not necessarily going to be able to rely on them to win the election. My strategy for getting those folks back is basically just to say, you were lied to. You were promised lower taxes. You were promised a safer world. You were promised humane and common sense immigration enforcement. You deserve an America that works for you. The president is not giving you what you need. This Congress is not giving you what you need. Help us put out the fire in Washington, and then we can go back to fighting about boring things like marginal tax rates. I'm already out issue knocking with the DFL. I put 20,000 miles on a brand new car in 6 months. I'm talking to folks around the district, and there is a real hunger for change. I spoke to an ophthalmologist at the St. Cloud VA who said last year her waiting room was full of MAGA hats, and she said now I see 1 a week at most, and everyone is complaining about what's happened to their veterans benefits, what's happened to their friends on Medicaid, what's happening to their taxes. The change is out there. We just have to go listen to people. We have to treat them like fellow Americans, and we have to ask sincerely for their vote and promise to work for them just as hard as we work for the folks we already agree with.
Thank you. Anson?
So the main point of that question was how will you vote, or get the vote of the persuadables, correct?
Right.
Swing voters, then, yes. You know, up to this point, I have really not been trying to stretch myself much further than the public forums. But once I do commit to running fully, I want to get out and meet with people individually. I do want to organize a lot of door knocking because people need to be heard. I want to go first to listen rather than just to tell them what they need. From listening, I'll have a better understanding of what they want, and they will feel heard. I do, beyond that, being in person, I do see the potential of reaching people through social media, and I need to make very good use of that. But also, when I hold events as a full-throated candidate, I want those events to serve a purpose in the community, such as bringing awareness to homelessness, the need for addressing climate change, for giving aid to victims of domestic abuse, or maybe doing a cleanup along a river bank as part of my meeting and listening session. I want to be very intentional in that way. I want to, even if I weren't to win the final election in 2026, I would want my campaign to have made a difference for the citizens of CD6. Thank you.
Jeanne?
Okay, I don't know if you probably know this, but there's more registered Democrats in CD6 than there are Republicans. Yep, it's true. And there are more young people who a lot of them that I've talked to are Democrat, moving into the Blaine area. So I think we're seeing that, which is going to benefit us. But what I see also is that people are very scared and they're very unsettled. Watching this authoritarian administration tear apart their democracy, I think that's going to translate into a huge voter turnout. I do. Would you agree with me? I think so. I hope so, right? I know. Yay! All right.
Some of us are kind of angry though, and would like to see it reflected in the people on stage.
Say that one more time.
You're not angry enough.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'll work on that. Okay. They're scared and unsettled, and then we're going to see the huge voter turnout. And I see activation all over the district, and that's amazing, and that's great. And people are not happy. They're not happy. We could actually door knock Republicans. I know people that have done that, and it comes with mixed reviews. So that is something that you could do as well. So thank you, Jackson.
So yeah, I mentioned this at my opening. Those are the things that I'm pursuing. Young voters, things like door knocking, might not necessarily reach out to them if they're renting or if they're maybe still living at home. Phone banks. Listen, I'm a millennial. Sometimes I'm just like, just text me. If I see a call number I don't recognize, that might not go through with them as well. I started a social media account. Right now, I'm a couple weeks into it. I've got hundreds of followers, and I'm reaching out and I'm touching base and reaching out to them in a place that makes sense to them. And a lot of the things that I'm hearing back is I'm angry, I'm frustrated. Where is that same anger and resentment? And the thing is that it's there. I think all of us have it here on stage. But I think when we think of a forum and think of a way that we're going to talk to people who are necessarily young voters or middle of the road, that sometimes that anger can be a little off-putting. It's there. We want change. We want to make a difference. We want things to get done. And we believe that we are the best person to be able to do that. And same with people kind of in the middle. It's been mentioned here that they've, to say that they've been lied to, but I think what we need to do, rather than saying Trump is the enemy, Trump is wrong, we don't like him, they don't like him either. I have family members who are like, listen, I don't like Trump and what he does, but he's president and I'm happy with that. We need to give them a reason to come over to the Democratic Party. We need to invite them into the tent. Let them know that, yes, we're a large tent, but you still have a voice. Because young voters and people who are still undecided feel like they don't have a voice, and they get told every election, every October, every November, no, come vote for us, things will get better. Just vote, and they do, and nothing happens. And so they say, well, why am I voting anymore? Why am I even going to a midterm vote when it doesn't matter? So it's giving them a voice, making sure that they know that they're listened to, giving them a reason to vote Democrat versus just saying, hey, don't vote Republican, we're your only other option.
Is the federal government is on a trajectory of not being able to help communities hit by climate catastrophes. Can you offer any hope? And let's start with Anson.
Restate the question, please.
The federal government is on a trajectory of not being able to help communities hit by climate catastrophes. Can you offer any hope?
Well, the climate change issue is such a tough issue. So many people are they live the way they've lived for so long, they don't want to change. And it's very difficult to encourage people to change. We need to continue funding the science that, points out what's happening, so that people see the necessity to help these communities that are suffering so much. I guess if we have the wealthy people paying enough of their fair share in taxes, I would certainly want to put that in the budget. Insurance companies are really struggling to keep up with these damages. And they're cutting benefits. So government is going to have to step in with aid. I think we need to stage better when a disaster is coming. We need to have those resources at the ready. I mean, I remember Hurricane Katrina. It was so terrible. That's one reason why I volunteered to respond for disaster response to Hattiesburg as part of our United Methodist Church annual conference's early disaster response team. I guess we need to train more people. We need the National Guard is great, but it'd be great to have more organizations. People are building in the floodplains, where it's dangerous. People are building in the fire-prone areas. It would be nice to maybe find a way of helping them find better homes elsewhere. But we do need to mitigate, for example, those fire-prone areas. We do need to continue to educate people about clearing the area. And when they build back, like in Los Angeles, they do need to build back better and safer. Thank you.
Jeanne, Marge, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The federal government is on a trajectory of not being able to help communities hit by climate catastrophes. Can you offer any hope?
Donald Trump is doing exactly the opposite of what he needs to be doing with FEMA right now. We have more wildfires, more hurricanes, more everything. It's going to be on the rise. And he has reduced the staff by a third. 24 senior people have left FEMA. He's cut grants for building resilient infrastructure and cut grants for a new generation warning systems. He wants to decentralize FEMA, and here's why that's not a good idea. All the states don't bear the same risk. There's some that have so many more natural disasters than others. So if by decentralizing it, you're going to cripple those states that are going to have to come up with money to be able to mitigate two disasters or three disasters sometimes. So we all don't bear the same risk, and that's why having it central has always worked. Because there's a number of states that don't need that money, but there's some that desperately need it. So when I'm in Congress, I would say, do not decentralize FEMA. Do not, and do not cut FEMA funds at all. When we get the majority, and when I'm in Congress in 26, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackson.
When darkness sets in and all seems lost, the one thing that we have left is hope. Doug mentioned he's a policy nerd. I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd. So, there you go. Thank you. So, I wish. We always have hope. And the thing is this Trump administration is one of the worst, if not the worst, in recent history. And the little sliver of hope that's still there is he was willing to give assistance to red districts. So he's not, again, I'm not applauding him for this. I'm just trying to find us that little glimmer of hope when all seems lost. But he's not willing to take it all completely away. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that it's not just up to him to be able to do that. Anson mentioned Katrina. My wife and I just watched the Netflix documentary on Katrina and finding out what the Bush administration did and the lack thereof, basically, and what FEMA did do and all the disasters that happened. And even if the government couldn't do anything, couldn't help these people, people help people. Our community is there to help people. And I think just taking a look around here, what we have in this room is if these floods happen to us, or if we were caught in a snowstorm, or anything like that, we'd be able to at least look around our community, put aside our differences, whether you're red, whether you're blue, whether you drink Coke or drink Pepsi, it doesn't matter, root for the Packers or the Vikings, we're still going to be able to help you and come together. And so that's where I think our hope lies, is within the people that we have, and with one of us being up here and into Congress, hopefully in 2026, we'd be able to hold the administration accountable and bring back that hope.
Thank you. Doug.
So I will speak your Lord of the Rings, and I will mention Star Wars, and I will say rebellions are built on hope. The good news is, the bad news is that the administration has defunded FEMA. The good news is the administration has pumped a boat ton of money into DHS for things like ICE and other things. And when we get to Congress in 27, we can loot that money and give it back to the states for FEMA assistance. Because Even if they're making up the severity of the immigration problem, they cannot make up the severity of climate change. So, my friend in the back talked about why we aren't more angry. I'm angry every day. I mean, angry gets me up early. Angry is what sends me out to talk to people. I'm in this to win the election, not the argument. What this administration and what his best friend Tom Emmer has done to this country and to this district is infuriating and frustrating. But we win the game by winning the election. And so we are going to build a campaign. We're going to all come together, Democrats, independents. Somebody once said the DFL curious. But we're going to build a coalition that's going to bring Tom Emmer home. That anger, that's what gives me hope. You can kick us as Americans, but you cannot knock us down. And if I've learned anything from the people of the 6th District, the people of Minnesota, is that we love a good fight and we hate to lose.
Okay, last question. Since the election, I've been disappointed with the R's in Congress, but also many Dems, who seem to be nothing like all will eventually return to normal. Do you agree with that, an approach? It's hard, I know, it's hard to read this right. Republicans. So, since the election, I've been disappointed with the R's, Republicans, in Congress, but also many Dems, who seem to be acting like all will eventually return to normal. Do you agree? In other words, or do you agree with this? And approach is the question, I guess. Jeanne?
You know, I really like Gavin Newsom. Gavin's a fighter, and he is fighting. And you guys know he's trying to rewrite the gerrymandering or the districts in California to counter what Texas is doing. And he's a fighter, and I love that. I think we haven't seen a lot of that from the Congress. I think they feel very, hamstrung that they can't do anything because we don't have the majority. So that has been a real frustration. And I don't think everything is going to be all okay. I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of work to do when the dust settles here in reversing all of the damage that has been done by this administration. And I really want, hopefully we can get the presidency, in 28, and we can start repairing, because it's going to be a long road. I think things will get better eventually when we can take back Congress, the Senate, and the presidency. But that's going to be a while. We've got a long road yet ahead of us.
Thank you, Jeanne. Jackson?
I think the gentleman in the back is right. Where's the anger? And I think what happened in 2026 was a gut punch. I think a lot of us weren't expecting it, and a lot of the metaphors that came out at that time was, okay, we took one, we're down on the mat. We took a punch and now we're down on the mat, and now we got to get back up and start fighting. And I think what happens is a lot of the Democrats want to play by the rules. And we see the rules and we say, well, hey, we gotta abide by them. These are the rules. We gotta make sure that we follow them and do that. Well, Republicans, on the other hand, change the rules in the middle of the game. When it doesn't suit them, it's changed up, things change, and they do it for their favor. It's like playing a football game and all of a sudden at halftime the rules are completely changed and you're down by 30. Democrats need to start fighting back. And even though we may not have the power or the majority, it still doesn't mean we can't do things like a Gavin Newsom and redistrict. Doesn't mean we can't do things like a J.D. Pritzker in Chicago where they're threatening to put ice on the streets there and fight back and say, bring it on. Try to do that to the people of Chicago. So it's things like that where people are upset. We have the No Kings rally. We need to keep fighting, because as soon as we stop and take our foot off the gas, that's when the Republicans win. And I think the Democrats are starting to realize that. I think especially a lot of young people that I'm talking to have that same expression to say, well, you told us that you would take care of us, and you're not doing anything. And so I think it's sure, it may take some time, it may take 2028 until we can officially have another president, but that doesn't mean that every day we can't show up. Every day we can't have forums like this. Every day we can't have rallies or protests, and make sure that our neighbors know that we are a strong community and we are willing to fight every day because we aren't going to take a break. Not now, not ever,
Thank you. So since we're all running for Congress, let me talk about what you can do in Congress to fight the fight. I do believe in the rules, but as a lawyer and as somebody who's worked in Congress, you can make a lot of mischief within the rules. You can put a lot of sand in the gears. We've seen that in the Senate. We've seen that with, for example, Senator Smith invoking something called the Byrd Rule to take non-germane, harmful amendments out of a budget bill. We've seen Maxine Waters adjourn a joint committee because she was never consulted and asked if it was appropriate for the committee to meet. If you know the rules and you know the parliamentary procedure, even a minority can tie things up. And what I would like to see Democrats do while we're fighting in the streets for our lives and for the campaign within the halls of Congress, I would like to see us not supporting things that shouldn't be supported, not going along to get along, not just voting to move something forward. Believe me, no one is more bipartisan than I am, but we are not living in a moment that is bipartisan. We need to do everything we can to stop the House from burning down anymore so we can get back to the process. So yes, I do believe folks in Congress now should be doing more. I do believe that the Senate Minority Leader should be standing up for his caucus more. I do agree with those members of the minority in the House who want to fight harder and say more and stop more. I want those folks to go out and find those signatures on that discharge petition to get the Epstein files out of the committee. We can do things. They are hard things, but they can be done. You don't just have to raise your voice to fight. Sometimes your best weapon, my friends, is Robert's Rules of Order.
All right. Well, thank you for this opportunity to speak about this issue. This is a very important issue. I think some of the Republicans in Congress, recently and currently, they had the mindset that yes, everything will return to normal. All I have to do is to pay lip service to the current administration, and then when that administration is done, I can get back to business as normal. I think that's a big risk, because it is my conviction that our nation is at a critical inflection point. Right now, we're talking about the National Guard, federalized National Guard, being sent into Chicago to wage war, the Department of War. That is very dangerous, very risky. Think Penn State, how many people were killed in just 14 seconds? It's mind-boggling. And in this scenario, if a Democratic governor decides to use their National Guard to stand up to the illegal motions or orders being given by the president for the federalized troops, that sets us up for an armed conflict that could result in a form of civil war. And that's real. And if you think it's not, think back to Ukraine after the Crimean Peninsula was taken and Putin was building up to invade Ukraine. People were saying, oh, it's not going to happen. There's no risk. Russia would never invade. And then it happened. We're seeing all of the warning signs now. We saw the warning signs then in Ukraine, and we are seeing the warning signs now. If we do not break the trifecta that the Republicans currently have, if we do not resist that authority, I fear it may be too late. Because other countries like China, like Russia, like North Korea, they're just waiting for our nation to fall. Thank you.
We do have one additional question, and we'll start with Jackson. It is, what is your favorite side dish this summer at the picnics?
I don't know if I'd call this a side dish, but I have a huge sweet tooth. So I would say basically any dessert that is brought would probably be my favorite thing at a picnic.
Doug, what about you?
I'm not going to lie, my favorite side dish is the second hot dog.
Anson?
All right. Well, because I was addressing issues at home, one of my friends from SB14 called me up and said, "Why aren't you here at the picnic?" And I said, "I can't be." So I was very sad that I couldn't be there. But why don't you shout out for me really quick what you saw at the picnics? Falafel. All right. Anything else? Anybody else go to the picnics? Salad. All right. Well, I do like a good hot dish. So if there was one there, I would have been eating that. So, but I love food in general. So.
Jeannie, what about you?
Potato salad.
All right. All right, thank you. Okay, moving along. We've got our closing remarks. Let's start with Doug on this one.
And I have, how long do I have, a minute?
You've got 1 minute.
1 minute, all right. Well, then I will be like Paul Wellstone. I'll say this fast. Thank you all for being here. It's really exciting to be on stage with these folks. I have been traveling this district for almost 6 months, making the case that it's time for a change in Washington and a time for a change in the 6th Congressional District. I'm all in on this race. I have seen you all at parades. I've seen you at fairs. I've seen you at Senate district meetings. I promised Chantal when I started this race that you would be more surprised that you didn't see me than surprised that you did. I like to think that I have lived up to that. I will take that same energy and that same drive all the way through the endorsement, and then we will take the fight to Tom Emmer, and we will flip this district in 2024. Since I have a little time left, if you want to join us later, we're heading up to Bellows Bistro, just up the street, to continue the conversation. If you want to hear me talk for more than 3 minutes at a time, we'd love to see you.
Anson?
All right. I guess I'd like to address the issue of anger. At the start of this year, it was not my intent to run for Congress. And when I attended the state convention last year, I mentioned as I was running to go to the DNC, I mentioned maybe one day I'll run against Tom Emmer, assuming, well, if Jeanne hadn't beaten him by then. But I didn't know that it would happen today. But I am angry with the current administration. You won't see my hair on fire because I don't think screaming and yelling is going to make our purpose any more effective. But this start of this new year, when I'm working in the aviation industry, and I hear the President of the United States say that the accident in D.C. between the helicopter and the commuter jet was caused by DEI, that made me very angry. Thank you.
Okay, I want to say that I've traveled this district for 2+ years. I've been to all the events or whatever. I just wanted to clarify that. When I am your Congresswoman, I will talk about the issues you want to talk about. I will legislate in support of those issues, and I will vote to get you the results you want. When you directly contact me, I will directly communicate with you. You won't get a form letter from me. I think that Tom Emmer is very, very vulnerable. I think that we do have an amazing opportunity because we've talked about the voter turnout, all of that, and typically in a midterm, the other party does well anyway. So we have a great opportunity to unseat him. I think people are scared. I think they're unsettled. They're going to be willing to listen to a Democratic candidate, and they're going to be willing to vote for a Democrat. Together, we have created a lot of momentum. Now is the time, you guys. Now we have the momentum. The political climate is aligning for this to happen.
Thank you, Jeanne. Okay. Jackson.
So in my opening, I talked about kind of the plan, how I'm going to beat Emmer, and you heard a lot of the policies that I think about. Just these 5 topics. I got so many more. You can go to my website. You can meet me after. We can talk more about that. But the phrase that I'm running under is "we the people." It's the first phrase in our Constitution. It's what I'm all for. Red, blue, doesn't matter. I'm for the people. All my decisions are going to be with people in mind. That's what I do currently in my job as a biomedical engineer, and that's the same thing that I'm going to do in Congress. I don't like waking up every morning wondering, what did the government do today? What did Tom Emmer tweet? What did Donald Trump Truth or whatever site he posted on? I don't know what's going on, and that, angers me. And I don't want you to have to worry about that same thing. So people are tired of Emmer, and they want change, and I'm ready to be that candidate of change. Thank you.
Please join us at the other forums that are planned. There's St. Cloud, October 11th, and one in Monticello, November 15th. You can go, there's a code up there. Please join us for those as well. And on a personal note, I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I feel a lot of energy in this room, and I'd like to see everyone turn this energy into action and do something. So thanks for being here.